playoff losses with more turnovers than shots made. Minimum of 3 turnovers, okay? James Harden, he has 18 of those. When he was at his peak, he was generating a lot of free throws. He takes so many threes. He generates so many fouls off threes.
Harden, of course, just isn't the same level of athlete or strength or flexibility or burst that he was in his prime. He and Donovan Mitchell both have fatiguing play styles in their own ways.
I kind of liken his legacy to Karl Malone, where you get these, not off the court, hopefully. This segment is this stat. We name a stat, right? Now, this guy averages, maybe sometimes it could be this guy averages 25 points a game if we contextualize it. But it's something, a little outside the box, right? And we're going to unpack it. Okay, so for today, I have this stat courtesy of Nate Duncan. So, playoff losses with more turnovers than shots made. Minimum of 3 turnovers, okay? James Harden, he has 18 of those. That's the most by any guard in NBA history. Now, before I turn this over to you, Ben, I've been thinking about this for a little bit before the show, and I think there's a couple things you have to add into this, right? James Harden, one of the forefathers of the helio ball movement, right? What that means is when he runs offense, he's the one, making all of the big decisions, right? Whether to shoot, pass, and usually that pass is not like a Rondo assist. It's something that leads directly into a shot. Or, he turns it over. So I feel like naturally, right, he's going to have a lot of turnovers. And then because of the way he has a lot of success, which especially when he was at his peak, right, he was generating a lot of free throws. There could be games where, he has 6 field goals, 7 turnovers, and is very efficient offensively, right? Because he's just getting so many shots at the line. He takes so many threes. He generates so many fouls off threes. So there's that part of it, right? And then the reason people bring this stat up is, right, and even in the comment of this tweet, hopefully our editors will pull it out, but it says, another James Harden playoff clunker. And I think what this alludes to is kind of his mixed bag as a playoff player. I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, where historically he starts off pretty strong in series, right? So he'll go games 1 through 4, you'll see kind of an ascension in production, and then you see pretty big drop off after that. And imagine there's a pitcher, right, in baseball. I know there is no pitcher like this, right, who say he can only throw a fastball, okay, and that fastball, he throws it 104 miles per hour, okay? I don't watch a lot of baseball. I don't know if that's humanly possible.
Of a closer.
No, hear me out, right? Hear me out. Okay, so he's got this one pitch, okay, and so if you throw that fast, right, below average to average hitters, maybe some good hitters, they just won't have the bat speed, right, to hit that pitch. But when you run into those great hitters, okay, they do have that the speed with their bat where they can hit the ball, right, and you're kind of cooked because you don't have any other pitches. And so with James Harden, he's very good at what he does, right? That one pitch is spread pick and roll, isolation ball, right? And again, if you don't have the personnel defensively to kind of key in on that and play that, it's hard. It's very hard to slow him down. But when you do have a great defense, like this Pistons team, they're second in defensive rating in the regular season, one of the better defenses, I would say, of the last 10 years, he doesn't really have like a plan B. He can't Steph Curry, or he can't throw the ball to somebody else and kind of run around a bunch of screens and play that way. It's just unnatural to him. And then also because he's so left-hand dominant, it's just kind of amazing to me that a guy at, he's been playing basketball for ostensibly, the last 30 years of his life, 32 years, 33 years, can't make passes with just his right hand, right?
Pistons have done a great job of that, I think. They really take away his left hand. They weaken ice him on the pick and rolls. They make the pocket pass lanes tight and small, and I think that really impacts a guy like Harden here. I think it's a good point. He does really have one pitch and one style, and that style is at its peak historically great, right? But especially with the way the NBA is trending these days with physicality and size and athleticism, and Harden, of course, just isn't the same level of athlete or strength or flexibility or burst that he was in his prime, which maybe he'd be able to, carry against whatever defense in his prime, but that's unfortunately not who Harden is. And yeah, I do think it is a play style that can lead to fatigue as well. He and Donovan Mitchell both have fatiguing play styles in their own ways. And I definitely think that comes up in the postseason, right? Like, Mitchell is so explosive, so much load on his body, so many like quick twitch movements that I feel like at the end of games you'll see his legs be kind of short on threes. And yeah, it's just a tough combination with being able to like take both of those players out kind of with switches. And Mitchell, I think, should be a lot better at beating those, but his decision making in this postseason has been pretty rough. And of course that just doesn't help Harden as well, right? Being the only real like primary playmaker on that team that just lacks a lot of like physicality and reliable play finishing too, outside of Mobley really and Allen. But Allen doesn't shoot either. So
yeah, Mobley, his shooting is kind of non-threatening to a lot of teams, right? Because he doesn't have that volume.
Generally going to be okay with him taking those threes.
Mm-hmm. So I think the broader question here is like, what is James Harden's kind of legacy as a playoff player? And I think it's a mixed bag again. I don't ever think a team is truly maximized like a Harden team, right? Because even if you look back to those Rocket teams, right, where it's like a bunch of these fake shooters, right, like a Luke Richard and Baute, or Eric Gordon, he had a lot of gravity, but was he really that deadly of a shooter? Caitlin Cooper, there you go. She wrote that article on 538 or whatever that website. It feels like forever since it's been around, but about how he takes those deep threes. Even that Rockets team wasn't perfect though, right? They didn't have like the perfect personnel. He didn't have like an Anthony Davis to play with him, right? Clint Capela's not Anthony Davis. And this Cavs team, right? Not only do they're that weird team where they lack physicality, but also not a great shooting team if you think about it when they're playing those two non-shooters on the floor at all times. So that makes it hard, right? Because Harden and Mitchell are both working with very little space. So we saw in the first round with the Pistons, like Cunningham was turning the ball over a ton, right? Because when there's nowhere to go with your dribble, you're going to lose the ball sometimes. I still don't believe, even though we have so much evidence of him kind of these weak playoff performances, that he's like just this terrible playoff player. I think I kind of liken his legacy to Karl Malone, where you get these like, not off the court, hopefully, but you get these gaudy right numbers though, these gaudy regular season numbers, and in the playoffs, Karl Malone was like notoriously not a great post finisher when it came to guys who could match his size and strength, right? Because he didn't have a ton of counters. I think it's the same thing with Harden. When you can get elite personnel, you kind of bog him down. So that means he's not, one of the all-time great playoff offensive players, but he still is a very good playoff offensive player. Am I right there?
I think Harden just goes from all-time offensive engine in the regular season to just a very good one. And yeah, I do think it is tough to build around him, but you saw how close they got in Houston at times. I think every player is challenging to build around, and it takes strengths and weaknesses and their trade-offs for every player. And just in this current modern era of basketball, with the meta and the way things were trending, with the physicality, and again in the playoffs with how much switching happens, that was like 10 years ago. It's like you switch against James Harden, it's over. He's just going to hit a step back three, or he's going to blow by you, floater, kick to the left or the right corner, whatever, for a open three with his left hand, right? Like, that's all he's going to do. But in 2026, when you don't have the burst to get by whoever you want, and you're a little less flexible and mobile, you can play a lot of different pick and roll coverages. And yeah, you're not just going to get like the deep drop that you might see in the regular season that you can just get to your left hand. But I do think it's true that Cleveland hasn't done the best job of insulating him and helping him succeed. So yeah, I think people go too far on James Harden, generally speaking, but it's the playoffs and it matters more, right? So it's understandable why people are so fed up when he isn't able to perform in the playoffs. And yeah, what do you think about the Cavs trading for him with the hindsight of what we know now? Like, do you turn that back? Do you not do that trade if you have the opportunity?
I mean, what are they going to do with Garland? You're going to run a whole other can of worms, Like, he plays a similar style to Harden. Yes, it's a little bit more fluid, right? There's a little bit more movement. Like, Garland can go give and go. He's more dangerous off of chase actions because he's a little bursty, a little quick guard. But defensively, like, you can't do the stuff they're doing with Harden, where they're putting Harden on, bigger guys. So that gave them some scheme versatility. And then, like, Garland, you want to talk about injury issues and breaking down. Like, he hasn't had the opportunity to do it too often, but he hasn't been able to maintain his body through a deep playoff run. So I don't know. I just think this Cavs team, and we're gonna have to push this for another segment, maybe a little bit later in the postseason when we kind of eulogize the Cleveland Cavaliers, which I have a feeling we're gonna be doing pretty soon here, unless something drastically changes. But I just think, like, this is a very flawed roster, right? And it comes down to Evan Mobley not being who he was last season. I really don't think Garland or Harden could fix this team's problems if Mobley's not kind of playing at that level he was last year.
I think if Mitchell isn't this superstar scoring engine, this team just really doesn't have a chance with the way they're currently constructed. With how they're not finding shooters, with how they're not spacing the floor as well as they could. I think Mobley definitely could be better, but I still feel like the problems are not all on him. I feel like he's not really getting the help that he needs in terms of getting the ball in good spots. And when he does, you see some better work. But yeah, it's tough to have him be like, he's not an unphysical player, but it's never going to be his strength. And when you're asking him to be like your main like enforcer as well, that's just tough. We need a real like strong power forward next to him.
Yeah.